I'm Brian Devolder. I'm 37 years old. I'm a husband of this lovely lady beside me here. I'm also a father of two. I've lived in Tampa my whole life. I was born and raised here. I went to school here locally. I've got a bachelor's degree in information technology and a master's degree in computer information systems. I've been working as a programmer, basically, computer programmer, systems engineer, for about 15 years. And I decided to go to law school. And so now I do that plus go to law school.
I'm Elizabeth Devolder. I was raised in Dallas, Texas, primarily. I lived for a while in upstate New York. And I moved to Tampa in 2006 with AT&T. I worked for the AT&T Real Yellow Pages at the time, and they opened an office here in Tampa in 2006, which now sounds totally out of date, but it wasn't at the time. I met Brian through that process, and we got married in 2009. We had our daughter Sophie in June of 2010, and while we have been in law school, we had our son Anthony. So we started law school in January 2013, and we're about 2/3 of the way through. We have just about a year left.
Well, the story about how we decided to go to law school, I wanted to go to law school for a very long time. And I was working and had a family and a wife and a mortgage, and we didn't really have the opportunity to go to law school unless it was something you could dedicate full time to do. And I'd been looking for a way to go to law school for quite a while, and I saw that Cooley opened up a campus in Tampa close to our house. And I came to Elizabeth and I said, here's this campus here and they have these evening programs, so I would be able to go and I'd like to go to law school. And she said, you're not going without me.
I had also always been interested in going to law school. I had been on the debate team in high school and loved history, loved English, and loved the intersection of those two topics in law. And when Brian brought that idea, and we had a serious discussion about it, there were two things that popped in my head. The first is, when your husband wants to do something and has a dream, you don't tell him no. And the second thing is, if he's going, I want to go. So we found a way to make that work for our family.
So we're not traditional students. We're married. I have a full-time job. We have the normal responsibilities of a middle-aged family. And a lot of times folks ask us how we were able to do it, how were we able to make it work. I think for us it was communication and scheduling.
A lot of it.
That really allowed us to do it. We had to make a plan, and you have to plan out, when are we going to be able to study, how are we going to be able to spend time with the kids, how are we going to be able to have childcare, how am I going to be able to devote what I need to work at the same time, devote what I need to school, and how are we going to have time for one another. And it was a matter of just laying out a schedule that's our lives are very tight in terms of time. So we have a schedule that's extremely tight, and we budget, everything that we need to get done, we budget, and then we're able to do it. I would say also that Cooley has really been very helpful in terms of allowing us to do that. The administration has really treated us more like family than like students. And so
Absolutely.
As things have come up, they've been willing to help us to be able to achieve the dream of going to law school and finishing law school. Elizabeth had a baby during, was it the third semester?
Well, that was when we found out that we were expecting. So that is probably one of the areas where Cooley has been the most help for us. Just when you look at the lifespan of our time here at school, finding out that we were expecting a baby kind of threw a wrench in things a little bit. We had actually just decided that we were going to not try anymore for a baby when, before I could get to the doctor, we took a test and we were expecting. So that's kind of sometimes how things work. And we went to the administration, and I am now after Anthony's a year old and I'm 3 credits behind Brian. I didn't have to take a term off. I just based on the schedule of when the baby was coming, was able to do that and take an exam early and take a class without an exam and come back the next semester with a pretty reasonable load. And so that worked for us.
So most law schools kind of say, here's the 5 classes you're going to take, and you're going to take them in this order, and then you're going to take these 5, and then you're going to take that's just the way it is. It's a dogma, right? This is how it is. Cooley was really flexible with us. So they let her take an elective course that didn't have an exam. They let her, drop her credits down one term and then move them back up. And that's kind of how we've both been able to do it, because they did it for me also. I started out taking 6 credits, and then I figured, okay, I can handle this. I can do a little more. Moved up to 9, moved up the next term, and then if I need to move down, I can move down. Maybe it takes an extra, few months or an extra term, but you can get it done, and they're willing to help you to do that. And that was something, I don't think we could have done that without that level of help.
Yeah.
So as a law student, you go through law courses, you take your exams, and you have all this law and all this knowledge in your head. And what's really nice is to be able to do something with it. And something that we thought was wonderful and that Cooley allowed us to do was a client counseling competition. And our coach, Dean Christine Church, was just amazing. She was able to give us the opportunity to really experience what it would be like to be an attorney, to have clients come in, to counsel those clients, and to provide them feedback. Some of it's legal feedback, some of it's non-legal feedback, but in a real world type of situation. And Christine Church has this kind of magic sauce that she's able to give to students, and by taking on the information that she gives us and applying kind of her formula to it, we were able to do very well. And it's nice to be able to have a school that allows you to gain this type of practical experience while you're a law student. And I think that was something rare and something that I appreciated very much.
Yeah. I think that there's a lot of attorneys out there in the marketplace, and a lot of people can know the law, but not everyone can interact well with clients. And yet when you talk about what is going to make you the most successful attorney, it really is that client interaction. And the client counseling competition helped evaluate our skills in that arena and helped improve them. So we participated in the in-school competition 2 years in a row, and were able to go on to regionals and to nationals. And through those experiences, we had 10 different interactions with potential clients that walked in the door with some type of a problem, and we had to evaluate that problem. We had to, most importantly, listen to them. We had to not judge whatever they told us, because attorneys hear some crazy things, and we heard some crazy stories during these rounds. And so it was important to make the client feel like you were on their side and not that you were judging them. We also had to communicate the professional responsibilities of lawyers in a way that was easy for them to understand and didn't take a long time, because you're on the clock as an attorney and you've got to get through that client interview. So we were able to do those things, and it was really a great experience.
So after having the opportunity to compete in the client counseling competition here at the school, we were able to go on to the regional competition, and we were successful at taking first place there. And then we went on to the national competition, and we were able to represent Cooley and take first place there also. And we're very proud to be the national champions right now for client counseling. The experience was really unique. As a law student, you get to see your law school and your law students, but it's very nice to go out to kind of that community of law students and see people from all over the country, different places, different backgrounds, and be able to interact with them and compete with them. And really there's a camaraderie that I think you feel from law school.
Sure.
By going through law school with other law students. It's hard for everybody, and so sort of that pain makes a camaraderie with the other law students. And the competition, allows us to hone our skills and sharpen those skills for use and practice later, and it was a really beneficial thing. We were really thankful that we got to do it, and we felt very honored to represent Cooley.
So we won the regional competition that was held in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. It was about a month later that we went to the national competition, and that was held in Durham, North Carolina. And when we went, we competed against the top 12 teams in the country were at that competition, one from each region. So we represented the region for Cooley, and SMU represented the region from, a separate region. I think some of the other schools were University of Nebraska, Texas A&M. There were some pretty big schools that participated in the competition and were at our national competition level, and they were pretty good. We got to see them in the kind of holding room while we waited for rounds and prepared, and it was tense. Everybody was working on their own things, but we had 5 rounds total. We started out going into 3 preliminary rounds. The clients that walked in each had a problem. We had a 1-line sentence. A father is concerned about the well-being of his unborn child. And that was as much as we knew going in. When we walked into that round, the client came in and told us that his girlfriend was expecting a baby, and they were about 6 weeks out from the birth. And she had come home one day and decided that she wanted to do a home birth with a midwife. And he thought that was the craziest thing he had ever heard.
Pregnant lady went a little crazy. I was shocked. I never heard of that.
You don't have any personal experience with that.
No, I don't have any experience with that.
So anyways, this gentleman was very concerned about his unborn child and wanted to know what his rights were. And we had worked with our coach, Dean Christine Church. She had given us the outline of the law, and we had done some basic study. The competition doesn't test you on the law, it tests you on your ability to interview and counsel the client. But to give them options, you have to know a little something. So we told the client about what his rights were and what some options were, both legal and non-legal. And in that particular case, the non-legal options were stronger for him. Fathers don't really get a chance to tell the mother what they should do to take care of the baby in the womb, but they do have influence over the mother. And so we really encouraged him to mediate with her and learn more about the things she was proposing and try to find ways to make it acceptable to both of them.
I didn't really tell him, but you don't really get much say after the baby's born either. But, I left that part out.
So that was the first round. The second round was a young lady whose child had been taken from her by the Department of Social Services, and the child had been diagnosed with diabetes and needed a certain amount of care. And this woman belonged to a religious community that did not believe in traditional medical care. They only believed in prayer for the child. And so the child was removed in order to get him the medical care he needed, and she now came to us fairly desperate and said, I want my child back, and what do I have to do? So the initial response is, well, if you're now willing to give him the medical care, let's move forward with that. When you asked enough questions, what you found out was that she had 7 other children at home. The religious community had her, took care of all of her living situation. And so if she made that decision, she and her 7 children were immediately out on the streets, which isn't really the right thing either. And so we had to work with her and counsel her to come up with
a plan for both her safety and the child's welfare, and also to meet her needs, because it's more than just the legal needs, there's some emotional needs there too. And we felt like we were able to do that in that instance. And so we were presented with a number of different scenarios, from folks who had done in vitro fertilization to have children. In this one instance, they had a contract that if the husband were to pass away, they would destroy any remaining embryos. Well, the husband was in a car accident with their daughter, The husband was killed, and the daughter had a severe brain injury that required the use of the embryos through stem cells to cure her. And the contract said the embryos would be destroyed. And so we had to try to navigate a way that would help this child and, be able to, within the boundaries of the law, help her without breaking the wishes necessarily of the husband. We had instances where there was a foster family that had grown very close to a foster child. They were in the process of adoption, and through discipline, he spanked the child. And the social services took the child away, and the child ran off and ran back to the foster family because they were very close and they wanted to be together, and he was hiding the child out and didn't want to give the child up. But
What an ethical dilemma for an attorney, because you can't aid in an ongoing crime, but this client was very convincing and you wanted to help him.
And so it was very challenging situations that I would assume, from what the judges said, these are real world situations, maybe the strong end of the spectrum, but I can't imagine getting that kind of practical experience in any other way. I mean, unless you're actually an attorney doing the job. So I felt like we got some very unique training and very unique practice that we wouldn't have gotten anywhere else.